Welcome to Fresh Start Podcast. I'm Dave Henning, and today my guest is Dan Portik from the Cleveland, Ohio area. Dan, welcome.
Hi, how's it going?
Fantastic. Great to have you with me. You are a best-selling author of social media marketing, which is, of course, very big today, and self-help books with 30 years of experience as a sales executive and business owner. Excellent. So tell me about that, Dan. Tell me about yourself and your background and what have you been up to?
Well, with this COVID thing, we're kind of like, all like this, watching what's going on. But, myself, I've been in sales marketing, as you mentioned, about 30 years now. I've owned video production companies and advertising agencies throughout that time. And, recently I've had a new company. It's called BBS Film Productions. It's about 4 or 5 years old. And we've been doing that, quite some time now. And I've also got into authoring. Probably about 3 years ago, I became an author and really had some unique opportunities to partner with some very famous people to write some unique social media books.
Very cool. And we talked before, and I had mentioned that I had actually seen your friend Tom Hopkins at a big Zig Ziglar conference, probably at one of the many ones I went to see Zig in Charlotte, North Carolina. I first saw him in Kansas City back in my old radio days many moons ago. But Tom, what an incredible guy. I still print out and have his copy of his morning mental wake up. It was a little shower hanger thing. I actually have it memorized, but I won't. I could quote it for you, but let's not take up your time today.
No, it's all good.
So that's really cool. Tell me about that relationship that you've had with Tom, and you co-authored a book with him?
Yeah, so it was really unique. What we found probably about 5 years ago, what I found is I'm finding that sales has become more online. It's less talking, less face-to-face, and I really kind of pushed that to the limits by starting to prospect, present, and close without ever speaking to my customers. And sales as much as $20,000 with international companies, where I would go in and through a certain way that we would sell, specific videos and marketing that we would do, and a specific timely approach, I was able to do that. So I said, there's something to this. It's basically a system we've created. So I went to my mentor, Tom Hopkins. He was been the guy that years I've always went to, the go-to guy to learn from. And I went online and I reached him through LinkedIn. And I asked him if he would be interested in writing a book about this, because most of the techniques I used were his techniques. And before I knew it, I had someone calling me back. Well, he actually got back to me within, I would say, a week. He said, hey, you know what? Your concept seems interesting. Why don't we have you talk to our VP of marketing? So I reached out to her, and she got back to me and said, hey, do me a favor, send me a brain dump of what you're doing. Just send it all to me, And we started building on that. And she said, what we'll do is we'll take this and we're going to go to publishers, and we're going to start shopping publishers for this. So they liked the idea. We entered into an agreement, Tom and myself, and his company and my company. And probably within 3 months, we got a call back from publishers saying, we're really interested. We'd like to publish this as soon as it's done. So now we're on, the green light's there. We have to create this thing. So they were great. Tom Hopkins is exactly like he is on stage. He is just a great guy. His whole team is fantastic. They just took this thing and just created it, helped me create. They took my crazy ideas and they put it into just a perfectly developed book that really helps people on how to close sales without ever meeting them. And in this day and age, that's a really big. So probably within 2 months after that, we did a promotion, and it just sold like crazy for about a month, and that put us in the best-selling status. So long story short, that's what happened pretty much.
Well, that is very cool. And you still have a relationship with Tom and his family, is that right?
We do. We're actually doing some other projects right now. He since then is retired. He's in the process of retiring. And I asked him, you know what? I think now's the time would be great to develop a documentary on you. So he agreed, and it's called Master of Sales, and we're in the finishing stages of it. I would say it'll be done in probably within a 2-month period. And that's going to be his life story. So
that is amazing. I love that. One of the big things I remember about Tom was when I saw him, and this is going way back, so hopefully my memory is somewhat accurate still. But he was really big on handwritten thank you notes. In fact, I'm connected with some really close realtor friends in my business networking breakfast that I go to, and they still strongly believe and use handwritten thank you notes. And of course, Tom was a huge real estate guy out here, I believe, in Southern California. Is that right?
Yeah. He moved there, and he really built that business too. And then everybody thought he was crazy when he left it. He says, "You know what? I need to teach people how to do what I'm doing." And at the time they thought he was crazy, but after that, it was like it was the best movie ever made.
You definitely got to keep in touch, and when that documentary is done, I'll be one of the first to watch it, because I really appreciated his positivity, his approach on life, as you say, his humanity, the fact that he's a real guy with real ideas, and that you connected is so cool. I just love that. So, and now tell me, if you don't mind, a little bit more about, you've been doing this production company. I actually, for a short stint, remember Dick Clark, American Bandstand, who
sure, yeah,
he had a saying that if you're in radio and if you haven't been fired, you haven't been in radio. If you haven't been fired at least once. So I worked at 10 different radio stations, and I actually had an offer to be a station manager in Pittsburgh, not real far from you, years ago, that I turned down. But fortunately, I had the privilege of being fired from a radio station, and I briefly had my own advertising agency. I picked up a couple of radio and TV clients, and I had a background in print as well. And so interesting that you had this agency, and you still have the production company. Is that right?
I do. Yeah. And it's growing. I mean, the nice thing about it is it's primarily video, and this is the time for video. Both the books, my first book, Fill Your Funnel, and the new one coming out, what's the name of my new book? Oh, The Secret Online Door. Both of them use video as the main catalyst for reaching and really kind of persuading people into, working with you on the process. So for us, it was a nice transition for me to be able to do that and put it together. So a lot of what we do is video production, video content marketing. We take those videos and put them in specific areas through the sales process.
And is it mostly like on social media, or also the traditional type of advertising?
Primarily social media. We don't do a lot of TV commercials or things of that nature, but just the way of the world right now, one of the easiest ways to reach people is through social media.
Oh yeah, so you're saying that you mainly use social media for your video marketing. However, you have in the past done television and other traditional media like that, right?
Right. Up until about 10 years ago, we were doing the brochures, websites, all the basic things that you would do to market, and then traditional TV as well. A lot of corporate videos, things like that. But nowadays, it's short social media. It's little 30-second videos, 1-minute videos, just teasers, things to get out there to guide people in the right direction, to either find you or find your product or service.
Okay, cool. And what have you found in terms of social media? Are you all over the place, and your Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, all that kind of stuff?
Correct. So in my world, I've been on LinkedIn since its inception, since it started. So I've got massive amounts of people over the years that I've put in there. I always found the more you have, the better, because they're always connected to somebody else. Everybody knows 250 people, as they say. And for me, it's been really nice because social media is still the unique way that you can go in and actually reach someone cold, and it's okay. If you send emails cold, it's a little more difficult, or even a phone call. But social media, you can kind of do that. And it kind of softens the blow when you go in and talk to people.
Yeah, turn a cold market into warm market, so to speak.
Right.
I once got a cassette. Remember cassettes?
I do. That's how I got Tom's first things on those books.
Oh, yeah, exactly. So I once got a cassette I bought some leads out of a Pennsylvania company that does leads, and for a direct marketing company I was with. And I got this cassette from a guy named Doug Firebaugh, and Doug actually had a little cassette that how to make friends on the phone in 60 seconds. So it's kind of like the old Will Rogers approach. Like, I've never met a person I didn't like.
right, exactly.
But
very nice.
But yeah, I've noticed. In fact, you might not have seen this yet because it's brand new to me. I interviewed a guy yesterday from London, and he's quite the marketing guy, and but he found out about what connected us, Matchmaker.fm, this new service that's by my friend James Mulvaney, who I was blessed to interview a couple weeks ago. And this gentleman yesterday, I had a nice interview with him. And then this morning, there's a thing, it's kind of like Facebook Live, but it's on LinkedIn. You may already know about this. I didn't know about it. So I just opened my LinkedIn to check my messages, and he was on there doing a review of all the people he's had an interview with, podcasters like me. It was called It's called The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, about what podcasters are doing now, because, as you know, that is exploding. People of all ages have their favorite podcast that they listen to, be it crime drama, political, or social stuff, and ours. So I just thought it was really interesting that LinkedIn is. Let me rewind a second here. I'm actually right down the street from the Googleplex, and LinkedIn originally was on the same road, just farther down, and they opened up two brand new humongous buildings just a couple miles down the street. And it used to be like, when I talked to my wife, I guess we have to put a profile on LinkedIn, but nobody knows what it's for.
Right. Well, it seems to be the only one now that, well, there are others, I'm sure, but the only one that you can really keep still business related, and you can drill into almost anybody through LinkedIn, which is really nice.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well,
the other thing I found is that all the gatekeepers, anybody that has any type of status has a gatekeeper or an assistant that they're with. And in many cases, you can get right past those certain people and go right to that decision maker through social media, because they're not expecting it. They're almost like blindsided. So it's pretty unique.
You remember who Dan Kennedy is?
That sounds familiar.
Yeah, he was one of those guys that also spoke at a Zig Ziglar event, and I would get like a 50 comp tickets, and I'd take my sales team to see Zig, and it'd be like a bunch of real estate people. That's where I saw Tom Hopkins and a bunch of other people, and Terry Bradshaw from the Pittsburgh Steelers.
He always followed them with them. Yeah.
And so the little arena would be full, maybe 10, 12,000 people.
Yeah.
Dan Kennedy would be the very last speaker, and it was a long day. And by that time, like 2/3 of the people had left. And Dan would give his little talk, maybe to 2,000 or 3,000 people, and he would actually outsell marketing and advertising material, outsell Zig Ziglar and every other speaker that day. But the reason I mentioned that is that you reminded me, talking about getting past the gatekeeper, that Dan could get paid in the neighborhood of $20,000 to write one sales letter to a CEO. But they were so crazy and unique. Like one time, he wrapped up an oar from a rowboat and UPS'd it over to a CEO who refused to talk to him. And the guy would open it up, and there'd be a little note in there. This is you're going to be up the creek without one of these if you don't talk to me.
Yeah, that's right. 3-dimensional marketing. I've done that many times. Yep.
Yeah, so it's interesting that you say that LinkedIn, is, as you know, the biggest challenge is to talk to the actual decision maker.
Right. And there's another phase to it. In the books I have, we talk about, you have to start at square one. Square one is what people see when they look at you online. So if you're going to go to try to talk to a CEO, you can't be having a profile picture of you drinking a beer, chasing the dog around in a T-shirt, I know your level, right? So by doing that, you respecting their time, because time is probably the most valuable commodity to any CEO. And if they see that's the first step. You really got to, have that look and feel for what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was interviewing this other guy out of New Jersey, Philadelphia area, and he's a kind of a LinkedIn trainer kind of a guy, and so I.
Yeah.
I don't know if he appreciated my sense of humor or not, if you know what I mean, because I said, so what I hear you saying is that you really shouldn't be putting cat videos on LinkedIn. So,
if you're a cat trainer, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, if that's your specialty.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, well, back to you. Enough of my silly stories, but anyway. Yeah, so you have your one of your books is a #1 bestseller on Amazon in several categories and in several countries. So you mentioned a couple of the books, and you're working on this new documentary, right? And so what? May I ask you kind of a little bit different question as well, if you don't mind?
Sure.
Yeah, so what I love about the people that I've met in the last few weeks doing podcasts is there's also another side to your story, and I'm really fascinated about the fact that you have come up with this great idea for caring for the homeless. And of course, in my area of San Francisco, Silicon Valley, it's a reality here for sure. So,
oh yeah,
are you okay with sharing a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll tell you how it kind of came about originally. Probably about 10, 15 years ago, my one company was having a really tough time. We were doing great, but then 2009 hit, and it made a really tough impact on my life, and we had to kind of reinvent ourselves. So one day I was driving a sales call, and I was going through this, financial thing, and somebody was trying to sue me for, I think it was around $17,000. It was a large sum of money at the time. And I was driving, and I see this homeless guy on the side of the road, and God came to me, and this may be a little to tell you, something inside me said, "Go give this guy something." So I literally pulled my car off the road, went across the street, almost got hit by a car, and just reached in my pocket and gave him everything I had in my pockets. It was not from me. It was just, it happened. I get in the car, my phone rings. It's my attorney, and he says, "Oh, you know that one problem you had? It's gone." What? Fast forward 10 years, I met a guy in a limousine, and we were talking. He had a limo company. He was one of my customers, and he ended up making these packets, and he was putting them in the trunk of his car, and they're basically packets for the homeless. When the limo drivers would pull up, there'd be a homeless guy out there or whoever it might be, and it would be a packet with like food and clothes and whatever it is, usually in the winter, and he would give them out. So I thought to myself, you know what? Why don't we try to expand this now? Let's take this to the next level. And so through my company, we've started to develop these packets on a little bigger scale and brand them as carepackstoyou.com. And you can go there and order these packs. We also would accept clothing. And like we have a group that sent us, 500 power bars, which was great, because they're a full meal. You can put them in these packets. So we're kind of doing this still on a small scale. But last year we gave out about 450 of them to local Cleveland homeless, which was nice, and it's kind of growing. So I kind of want to see that getting to the next level. There's over 10,000 homeless people in Cleveland alone. And my goal is next year, let's get this up to getting everybody one of these packets. So that's the process.
Yeah, I recall flying out to Denver to see my grandson who was at university there, and it happened to be the day that Tony Robbins was going to speak, and it was kind of on my little bucket list to see Tony in person sometime, and I went to see him. But driving to the arena where he was going to be, huge, the inner city homeless populations, you know, it's a big deal. It's a big deal. So I was very impressed with when I saw that you're doing this, and I saw it. I went ahead and printed out a little bit of your, box of crackers, gloves, warm socks, hat, spiral notebook, pens, breath mints, very practical things that are useful. Absolutely. And I'm with you. I've been trying to be much more sensitive to what we call that still small voice of the Holy Spirit, quite frankly. And yes, there is a God, and yes, he does speak to people if we're paying attention, if we're listening. So
sometimes sometimes he'll push and sometimes he shoves, right?
Yeah.
But it works.
or suggests.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right.
And not so still small of a voice.
Yep.
Well, that is great to know. So as we kind of wrap up our time together, first of all, thank you so much. This has been great.
Thank you.
It. And what would you like me to share with our listeners? How can I help you in terms of either your book or anything that you're working on? How can I help you?
Yeah, so I've got a couple for everything goes through danportik.com. So if you go to danportik.com, you can get you can go right to the book. The two books I have right now are Fill Your Funnel. The site for that is fillyourfunnelbook.com. And that's the one with Tom Hopkins. And the new one's coming out June 22nd. And that's kind of like expanding thesecretdoorbook.com.
Okay.
And that really expands on, that's another story. But it's a good book. It really helps consumer oriented.
Dan, what a pleasure to be with you today. Thank you so much. And
you're welcome. My pleasure.
Yeah, and I look forward to staying in touch and doing great things together.
Likewise. Awesome. You take care.
All right, thanks.